I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, so I wanted to just step up to echo some of the sentiments that have already been shared, and to also echo the sentiments around the need for transparency. It's come up in the last few testimonies, and again, I want to echo how important it is to the community that folks understand what you're deciding, why you're deciding it, and as folks have said, really thinking about what time of day and how you're able to engage the people. I also wanted to speak because I've had an opportunity to bear witness. Since 2003, I've worked in different capacities with communities in Rhode Island. And I don't really come here to speak for them, but to share my observations as I've had the opportunity to bear witness. I've had an opportunity to work with families who have children with asthma. In that capacity, I walked into homes and saw the families who had nebulizers, as was noted earlier, plugged in to make sure that their children could breathe. I had an opportunity to, in fact, engage with families who weren't caring correctly for asthma, as their pediatricians had noted, because they didn't have the resources to pick up medications. They didn't have the resources to make sure they replaced those nebulizers. Those are folks who are relying on electricity to make sure that their children can literally breathe. I've also worked as an educator for over a decade, and I had an opportunity to work in highly specialized schools. I've had an opportunity to work in schools where we served teen parents. I served young women who were forced by economic circumstances to stay in relationships with abusive older men because they had to make sure that not only they, as young women, but the children that they bore had an opportunity to have electricity and heat as is required for newborn children. Yeah. I've seen parents turn what appears to be a blind eye, but in fact is passive desperation, while they saw their young daughters engage in prostitution and stay in these relationships as 13 and 14-year-old girls with husbands or not their husbands who were 30, 40 years old. These are young women that I had an opportunity to teach single-handedly to see their struggle. I worked with colleagues who signed up to work in schools, who subsequently had to sign their students and our students up for things like housing and utility assistance. We went to educate the minds of young people and instead had to make sure they had homes and lights on. I also have had an opportunity to work with families whose students, as was mentioned previously, students who had to sell drugs, for example, and parents who knew what was happening, but their options were not work, not show up to pay the bills and intervene in what their young people were engaging in, or lose jobs, risk homelessness, but try to help their young people. I've watched one parent after another in the context of homeschooling choose homeschooling over public school because they have young people that they're caring for, their children who have medical reasons that prohibit them from entering public school buildings. Those families and those children rely on electricity to keep the internet going, to facilitate education, and to keep access to the medical interventions that are needed and that are preventing them from entering the school building. So I come here because I've had an opportunity to bear witness. I wanted to echo the sentiments that have already been said, and I wanted it to be clear that these stories that I share are before and came before these increases that have been put on the table. Thank you.
Thank you very much.